Thunder and Lightning. This is a two-player card game that represents a duel between Thor and Loki. You play the role of one of the two gods and you're sending out your armies to destroy the army of the opponent. However, as you do so, you also have a precious artifact that is in your possession and they're trying to protect it from the opponent. They may send spy and infiltrators and use game effects to steal it from you. So you have these two elements, the battlefield element and the bluffing sneakiness element. You're trying to hide your precious artifact. It's a simple game. It's very accessible. You can play with non-gamers because there's some mechanics that are reminiscent of very popular games such as Stratego that even non-gamers from time to time end up playing. You can definitely play with casual gamers. The question is there enough meat in this game to also entertain serious board gamers? Let's have a look at the game. I'll give a general overview of how it works and then we'll talk about that in my conclusions. Each player in the game takes on the role of Loki or Thor. Each player has a deck of cards and the cards may have a symbol here, which is the one that you see here, which indicates that the card is a mythological card and can be played from your hand into your discard pile to perform the game effect described at the bottom of the card. By the way, the art is pretty stunning. Look at these cards. Just amazing art. The card may have a numerical value such as this card here, on the numerical value, so the card can be used for combat. The card may have a numerical value and a symbol, which means it can be used for combat, and also it has a special effect that can be activated when the text allows it, depending on the effect that the card has. At the beginning of the game, players shuffle their decks of cards and they deal 9 cards to themselves. Then the players have to place 3 cards face down on the table to form the first row of their army. You have to imagine that there are 2 armies facing each other. This is the first row of Loki's army. This is the first row of Thor's army. Other rows can be built behind those by placing other cards, and you can have up to 4 rows of 3 cards each, and the cards placed in this direction, the columns are also very important. You can have up to 3 columns, so 12 cards maximum, 4 rows and 3 columns. Players at the beginning of their turn will receive action points, and the number of action points that you receive is equal to the number of columns that you have. Right now, if I'm lucky, I get 3 action points at the beginning of my turn. If this is the case, the opponent emptied one of my columns, then I only get 2 action points. Only 1 action point, and if you have no columns, so that means you have no cards in the battlefield, and it also means that you have lost the game. That is one of the victory conditions for the opponent to empty your battlefield. So you win by making sure that the opponent has no cards on the table at any one time. Now, what do you do with your action points? You can use an action point to draw a card into your hand, and your hand can have a maximum of 12 cards. You can use an action point to play a mythological card. Then you simply play the card into your discard pile and you perform the effect that is described in the text. Pretty simple. You can use an action point to deploy one of your cards onto the battlefield. The card can be played in an empty slot. It's also important to remember that there cannot be any empty slots. So if this would be the case, for example, this card is ever removed, then this card is moved up, and now say this is my turn to play my card. I could play my card here, I could play my card here, I could play my card behind that card. You can also play a card in a position where there already is an enemy card. There's a friendly card, in which case you simply slide back the card that is in the position where you're placing your new card, and also all the other ones that are behind. So pretty simple. So you have your some flexibility there. You can add people onto the battlefield, but once they have landed, unless they're moved by other cards and move them back, you pretty much need special effects to move them, or you need the cards in front of them to be destroyed for them to move forward towards the opponent. You can also use an action point to challenge a card of the enemy. This is a key action in the game. Now, to challenge a card of the enemy, you simply spend the action point, you select your challenging card in the first row, and the card will challenge the enemy card in the enemy front row that is facing it. In this case, if I'm challenging with this card, it will challenge that card, unless there are game effects that allow me to challenge other cards. When there is a challenge, the cards are revealed in case they're still face down. They don't have to. And then we look at the numerical values. The card with the highest numerical value destroys the card of the enemy, and the card of the enemy is discarded, and the winner stays there on the table face up. In case the cards have the same value, like in this case, they destroy each other, they're both removed. And again, if there are cards behind them, they move forward to fill up the space that was just opened by the destroyed cards. Some cards will have special effects that will create interesting moments when you reveal them. For example, if the opponent is challenging with that card, that is challenging that card, we turn them face up, and now the troll is facing the shield wall. The shield wall has a strength of 0, yes, but when challenging the battlefield, it defeats all cards except female archer, so boom. This card is destroyed, and however the card simply stays there and cannot challenge. It's powerful because you will sit there until you can use game effects to destroy it. Usually you will need to use the female archer to eliminate a shield wall. You also have cards that have sort of special targets, cards that do not have a great combat value. Usually they will lose combat against most enemies, but they have, I guess, a grudge match. They specialize into eliminating specific enemies. For example, when on the battlefield, Frigg, that usually will lose combat, may challenge and defeat Tyr, who is a very powerful card, has 7. So it's very useful if you find where Tyr is before you commit Frigg to the battlefield. So the way to look at the enemy's cards, look at that Tyr, what are the odds? The way of looking at the opponent's cards is to challenge them, but of course it can be a little risky because then your cards can be destroyed. A 4 has just challenged a 7. What were you thinking? The 4 is removed, but that may open a slot for me to challenge the powerful opponent. So a way of looking at the cards of the opponent is to challenge them, but it can be a little risky because you may be losing a good card just to look at the card of the enemy. Luckily enough, there are other ways of doing it through the ravens. There are many ravens in the deck. They're very powerful cards, and there's a card, the Odin card, that allows you to bring ravens back from your discard pile into your hand. The ravens can be used to challenge enemy cards, and they have some special abilities. One, you can use a raven to challenge a card in the opponent's first row. When you look at the card, a strength 2 to 7 card is placed face up in your opponent's first row. So simply you have looked at it, and well, that would be it. I looked at that card. Well, actually no, this is the interesting example. If I looked at a female archer, simply it stays there. But as the text says, if actually that only if the card is a strength of 2 or 7, other cards would be eliminated and defeated by the raven. So if there is another raven or some other sort of special cards that the opponent has placed there for whatever reason that is not a combat card with a power between 2 and 7, the card is eliminated. So in which case, in most cases, the raven is simply doing reconnaissance and giving information, but may also get lucky and destroy an enemy card. The raven, however, is also important because it allows you to challenge cards in your opponent's hand. This is super important and interesting. When you challenge a hand of cards of the opponent, you simply look at the back of those cards, the opponent showed them to you, you choose a card that you're challenging, the opponent has to reveal it to you, and then depending on what the card is, the card may have to be discarded, or the opponent may get to actually deploy the card for free. So you don't know exactly where that is going to go. You may help the opponent a little bit, or you may help yourself considerably if you discard some powerful card of the opponent. But the main reason for challenging the hand of the opponent is to look for a special artifact. Each player has a special card. Loki has the Odin's crown, Thor has the Odin's ring, and you are trying to force the opponent to discard that card. This is really important because if a player is discarding their own card, the card is challenged by the enemies, you lose the game. So I may have this card in my hand and I'm really worried about it. especially if the opponent maybe has played a card that allows them to look at my card, and now the opponent knows, oops, that I have that card. And if the opponent makes me discard this card, I lose the game. And I know that the opponent can use the Raven to look at my cards. Was this a Raven? I have a moment of terror. Whew, I've chosen this card. Was this a Raven? Okay, I've chosen this one. Because the opponent looks at this card, the opponent wins. This may seem like anticlimactic. Oh my gosh, I played so well and then I just lost because I got unlucky. If you are playing protectively, you'll make sure that your hand of cards is not too small. Then ravens do not have much of a chance of winning. So actually, this is really one of the pivotal elements of the design. The design is not all about destroying cards onto the battlefield. It's about keeping a balance between having a strong army that allows you to produce action points and is not exterminated so you don't lose the game, but also you need to protect your artifact. I see the game as kind of capturing elements of both military, like direct warfare, and intelligence. You kind of have to protect your court, you kind of have to protect your inner circle from infiltrators, assassins. That's how I see this mechanic working. So you have to keep a bunch of cards around your important card to prevent the opponent from stealing it. I see this as the bodyguard of the leader. So this actually is a very interesting mechanics. And yes, I have lost the game because the opponent found the crown, but guess what? Because I was careless and I have a hand of 3 cards. And the opponent hadn't even looked at my hand, but it was towards the end of the game. My deck had like 6 cards left in it. So the opponent has reasons to believe that by then the crown was in my hand. I lost the game, and I didn't feel anticlimactic at all. It felt like, yep, I mean, for a couple of rounds, I've been careless, I've been spending cards without worrying too much about protecting my crown. It's a part of the game where the opponent reasonably may assume that I have a crown. So that is the result of my actions and the result of the opponent's shrewdness. It didn't feel like it was just like, oh, a random thing out of nowhere. But I want to put a caveat out there that I think that you get that idea. It may feel like a random element of the design that may make the game look too random. And on the opposite hand, if you don't think about it, if you just think that the game is about the battlefield, then the game may look repetitive because it's pretty difficult to destroy the army of the opponent entirely, especially if you're both focusing on that thing. So it may feel repetitive that I destroy a card, you put it back, you destroy a card, I put it back. That is not the point. The point is to force the opponent to commit excessively to one of the 2 objectives, which is to protect your own special card or to have a strong army. If the opponent has too strong an army, then the opponent probably has a small hand and you can attack it with ravens. If the opponent has a strong hand to protect the artifact, most likely the opponent has a weak army. The point of the game is to force the opponent to overcommit to one of the 2 things and then deliver a powerful blow at that point to meet the victory conditions. And the other point in the game, of course, is you're trying to prevent the opponent from doing that to you. And you're trying to find a balance between these 2 aspects. This, to me, makes the game absolutely unique and very, very much its own. I don't know games that have this kind of mechanic. I don't know many of them, at least. There's also a third victory condition, which is pretty much victory by exhaustion. You win if your opponent is unable to use all of his action points, which must mean that the opponent is left with like virtually no cards, maybe just a couple of cards on the battlefield and nothing else. When you look at the design, you can see some familiar elements that seem to come from other games and they have resemblances with those. With this, I'm not saying, oh, plagiarism. I'm talking about cuisine. I'm talking about gourmet cuisine. You see the ingredients that have been used, but of course, if they're cooked together in an original way, that is all that matters. Nobody says, well, you're a great cook, but you cooked chicken and I tasted chicken before you plagiarized. Chicken is chicken, and a mechanic such as the one that we have in Stratego is something like that. In Stratego, that's probably the first analogy that comes to mind, where you have hidden units which have numerical values, but then some units are tailored to others and they create specific effects. That easily comes to mind, but again, this works differently because you have more subtlety, you have more ways of looking at the cards of the opponent. You can spend resources to look at the cards of the opponent so you proceed more safely, or you can go more Stratego-like and just commit people to look at other pieces, but it's more dangerous. So safety versus danger, safety versus risk, but there are resources that you need to spend to go more safely. Other things that seem to be familiar, if you are a word gamer, you probably have recognized something you've seen before. The Dixie system, it's a card system by Columbia Games for battles of the American Civil War. It's also played with cards. You also have 3 columns. The battlefield is represented by cards divided in 3 lines. There are things that you have seen probably from other games. Bluffing games, or you're trying to protect a certain card and you don't want the opponent to get that card. Stuff like Love Letter that has popularized that, of course, but we had games before. So these elements, you've seen them before, but they're combined together here in a new whole that really feels different, really feels unique. It is the strategical element with the card element, so you have hand management. So you don't have any stratego, all of your pieces are there at the beginning. You have hand management, you have risk assessment, you have to try to figure out what cards may come next to plan your strategy around those. There is the memory element, because you need to know the cards of the opponent, you need to take into account what cards have already been played and discarded. So you have the stratego, you have the card, the typical things of card games: hand management, risk assessment, memory. Then you have the bluffing element, and all of these things go together in a very smooth way. It doesn't feel like the mouse trap. It doesn't feel like mouse trap the game, like with all of those moving parts that don't really work together. It's incredibly smooth. The elements work together synergistically in an almost miraculous way. And I said this already in the main part of my segment. This makes it such that all the elements are so well connected that you can't concentrate on one without detracting from the other. And finding the balance is key. Even better is finding the right timing, because from time to time you will invest on one element more than the other, and you need to figure out when it is the right time to do so. If you concentrate on the battlefield, you may win and destroy the opponent, but as you do so, there probably will be at least a turn or two in which you're putting yourself at risk with a small hand, if you do have the artifact in your hand. And maybe you don't, and you bluff, and so the opponents are sending ravens against you, and as a result you're putting cards onto the battlefield thanks to that effect. But if you do have that, then you're really taking risks. And again, as the longer the game goes, the more likely you are to have the artifact in your hand, so that espionage, bluffing, intelligence element comes more and more into play. So I have to tell you this, the first game may be misleading, and the game may feel underwhelming, may not show you all that the game can do. Because at the beginning, as I started playing the game, I was very excited. I immediately saw what I perceived like some of the hallmarks of a great game, the way the cards went together so well, the effects were tailored to one another. As I started playing the game more, after like 10 minutes or so, the game started feeling repetitive because I was looking at the battlefield too much. Then as soon as I had a small hand and the opponent started sending ravens against me, I realized, oh, this is really not just about that thing, and the artifact is not like a secondary thing. The rulebook doesn't put too much emphasis on the artifact, it's just giving you the rules, but after a while you figure out, oh, this is what the game is about. I'm trying to say that it may be easy to misunderstand the design and see it as a pretty repetitive and mechanical game of like simply battle with cards, and if then the game of battle with cards ends because the artifact is found by the opponent, it will feel very anticlimactic, like, well, this wasn't an element of the design, it feels completely foreign. That is not the way the game is played, or it should be played, and can be enjoyed. Again, players play games in a way that is not fitting to the philosophy of the game all the time, but it's not the design's fault. This is a design that is excellent, it's so subtle. Again, maybe that's why I myself missed it at the beginning, what it was all about. And as soon as I started playing it the way it's meant to be, as a game of brutal force and subtlety, of combat strength and deception, of bluffing. In truth, also the battlefield you get to bluff a lot, but the bluffing that has to do with the ravens and with the hand of cards and may or may not contain the key to victory for the opponent, that is a whole level of bluffing which is different. Those two elements, combat and bluffing, go together very well, and again you have this flow of cards with different effects that do a lot of fun stuff that you have to manage, and you have to predict what the opponent may still do and what the opponent may try to do. So actually there's another element. The game may feel random the first time that you play it, as you do not know the game effects yet. Committed gamers may decide before the first game, they look at all the cards and get a good sense. If you don't mind the first game just to be a learning game, but keep an open mind so that you simply learn about all the effects and the synergies as you go. The first game will be fun enough as a learning game, but from the second game on, the game will become simply astounding, because then you can keep all of those elements in mind, and they come together in a very complex, sophisticated, refined, deep way. As I said in my introduction, yes, this is a game that is very simple mechanically, because you can draw casual gamers into the experience. It's pretty much like Stratego, the card game, but then it has levels of depth that reveal themselves after repeat play and after a while, that really make this game absolutely suitable for committed board gamers. There is enough meat, there are enough angles that you can use to approach the situation, to keep your mind busy, to keep you excited, to keep you interested. And to give you levels of decisions, which are really what makes a game interesting. When you have interesting, multi-layer, tough decisions, that is when a game becomes interesting for the committed board gamers especially. And when you have a hand of cards and you want to deliver a powerful attack, but you see the odds that will expose your artifact, that is a tough decision, and you have to make that decision very often, especially if you got your artifact early on. And there will be times where the artifact is there in your hand at the beginning of the game and the opponent never suspects it, and at the end you'll be rewarded by knowing that you bluffed well. There are all of these elements that come together incredibly well. It doesn't hurt at all that all these mechanical elements, which are excellent, come together in a game that has to be one of the most gorgeous that I have, one of the most gorgeous games. The art is simply astounding. There's a knockout of a game. I can't think of a bad thing to say. The only caveat is, give it more than a try. If the first time that you play it feels underwhelming, because I see how it can be a game that can be easily misunderstood. The real point may be overlooked if you're just thinking of it as a battle game with cards. It isn't. It is a complex, multi-layered experience with a lot of interesting decisions, with great replay value that rewards repeated play, that rewards commitment to the design. But that in itself does not take too much work to get into. Thunder and Lightning, an absolutely excellent game by Z-Man Games. We are in June now, so stuff like this has to be one of the best games that they play this year starts making sense. When I say this kind of thing in January, it doesn't mean the same thing. But we're in June, and I can say this has to be one of the best games that they played in 2016. An absolutely excellent game. I cannot recommend it high enough.